We'll begin officially. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the previously held meeting? There's a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. We have 3 items that are up for a public hearing today. The process for those that are here for the public hearings is just this. What we'll do is we'll ask a representative from our law department to swear in anyone who wishes to testify before the committee. That's the first step. Then what we'll do is the planning department will give a report to the committee. After that report, we'll then ask for those who are wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request to speak, and then we'll ask for those who wish to speak against the conditional use request to speak as well. After that, public hearing's over. We'll then open it up to questions for the committee members and then all of City Council. We'll basically repeat that process this evening. Again, you're invited to come back at 7 o'clock. After the public hearing at 7 o'clock, what we will then do is the committee will make a recommendation to all of council, either to approve, disapprove, or to table or refer the item for a later date. So without any further ado, Mr. York is here to swear in anyone here wishing to speak this afternoon in reference to any of the conditional use requests. So if you stand and be sworn in if you wish to speak.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, nothing but the truth? Say, I do. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. York. Very good. The first item that's up for public hearing is the zoning code, section 153, definitions, and section 153.31, business and industry requirements, creating urban overlay, UO areas, declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. The city is proposing to establish a form-based urban overlay area on Kenmore Boulevard. The purpose of establishing a form-based urban overlay area is to preserve and enhance the architectural character of existing and new buildings in Akron's older urban area neighborhoods. Neighborhoods such as Kenmore Boulevard are largely developed with century-old buildings established along the street front. Building before mass development of the automobile, these neighborhood business districts thrived on local pedestrian traffic. Current business development requirements of the zoning code, much of which was developed in the 60s, require new development to have a suburban feel with an overabundance of street-facing parking and deep-set buildings. While this style of development is compatible in some areas of Akron, it is a complete contradiction of how older urban neighborhood districts were developed at the beginning of the 20th century. Kenmore Boulevard itself contains median islands which separate east and westbound traffic. Access is provided to the rear of the properties via public alleys on both sides of the boulevard. A clock tower is in the middle island near the Kenmore Library. The majority of the area is zoned retail, business use district. The urban overlay would protect this important neighborhood business district by bringing use, parking, setbacks, and building design requirements in line with its traditional urban form. The new requirements are designed to be easily understood and attainable for current property owners and interested developers. Highlights of the proposed changes include promoting walkability and desirable urban form by establishing setbacks that bring buildings to the sidewalk, restricting the height of new buildings to 3 stories in keeping with the current character of the boulevard, establishing building design standards for new construction that are in keeping with the neighborhood's current and desirable urban walkable form subject to review by the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission, relaxing on-site parking requirements to require no amount of parking with new development, and restricting the amount of parking to no more than what is currently required by code in other parts of the city. The Kenmore Boulevard District has ample parking, public parking, along the boulevard and on public lots behind the buildings. Requiring any parking to be behind the buildings would eliminate outdoor sales of vehicles and merchandise. Planning staff, in conjunction with Kenmore Neighborhood Association, believes the goal of these changes is to re-energize this vital historic neighborhood, which is harmonious with the City of Akron's plan to grow Akron and Greater Streets Initiative. Both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the amending, supplementing the code in reference to urban overlay areas? If you can please provide for the committee your name and address.
Todd, if you don't mind, hit that button there. There you go. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Did you get the address?
Get the address,
Okay,
Mr. Clerk?
okay. I'm here as an urban advocate, a member of the Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance, but most importantly as a property owner on the boulevard. I'm here very much in support of this form-based code initiative, and the primary reason is this will preserve not necessarily the exact buildings, but it'll preserve this urban character of this 4 or 5 block stretch of urban neighborhood in the city. It's, of course, I'm biased, but I think it's the finest stretch of intact urban neighborhood buildings. And what it will do is it will keep the city in the city, as opposed to having the suburbs encroach within this city environment. So again, I commend planning for taking a lead on this effort. Now, I will say this, it's not, in one sense, it's a simple process. It's kind of like when you see it, you know it, you understand it. But the neighborhoods have their own distinctive characteristics. And the boulevard, with its intact buildings, really is a great place to start. So I thank you for bringing on this initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Eder. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment?
Hi, my name's Tina Boys. My address is 635 Harrison Avenue, Akron, and I'm also here in support of this ordinance. This is so exciting for me. I'm a fifth-generation Kenmore resident and a daughter of a business owner on the boulevard. And what Todd mentioned, preserving the urban character of our neighborhoods, I think is so important. And what's even more exciting is this is a great precedent for every other neighborhood in Akron that has a business district. It doesn't have to be like ours, but each of them deserve their own form-based code so that they're preserved in the way that they were built and meant to be maintained. So, you know, places like Astor Avenue and Copley Road, all of those areas deserve their own form-based code, I believe. And this is, again, a great precedent. And I want to thank Mike Antonucci for being so collaborative in that process. As a new organization, relatively new, Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance, one of our biggest goals is to work with the city and for the city in our neighborhood. We want to be advocates for our residents, but we also want to be advocates for what you're doing as well. This was a great practice in engaging people like us in the neighborhoods who have some, you know, frame of reference, like Todd here. He's a developer. He understands these things. I just want to commend you for engaging him and engaging us in that process, and I hope this is the start of many more of those types of conversations to come. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the amendment for the business and industry requirements, urban overlay? Anyone else in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against this proposal? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? Hearing none, I'll open it up to committee members. Just a couple comments here. So in essence, this is focused to complement the existing buildings. And we're also going to be shedding parking requirements, right? So there will be none. And it seems as though what we're going to do is discontinue the, this will make it extremely hard, say, for a franchise to come in and build like a dollar store or a, I don't want to be specific, but things like that, where they would want to tear down a building and then put in the urbanization or the suburbanization of our urban core, I guess, is what the comment I heard. And that's what it sounds like, and from reading this over, that's what it's meant to do.
Yeah, it wouldn't preclude a franchise per se, but as the name form-based alludes to, it requires the form of the building. So there's no problem with a franchise locating as long as the building is up on the sidewalk, the parking's in the back, So it governs more how the buildings look and feel, not so much the use.
Gotcha. So in essence, would they be required to, like, say, build a two-story building on the boulevard? Because it seems as though there's a lot of them are two-story there. Just
I think the maximum would be 3 stories. The way the process, it would be the opposite of the way the zoning is now. If they wanted to build a building set back from the boulevard with a large parking lot, they could request a conditional use, but right now, to build a building that matches all the buildings that are there, they would need a conditional use to do that. So that's kind of what we mean by, flipping it back to it's back to the future in a way.
I was going to say, and it seems as though that's really, that's a good way of putting it, in terms of back in the day, whenever these buildings were built, basically they wanted them on the sidewalk, they wanted them more walkable. So in essence, we're going back to the 1920s in terms of the zoning code then, and what that had done. Interesting. Comments or questions from any committee members, any council members at this point? Mr. Swirsky?
I just want to echo the affirmation for collaboration that took place between the city and the neighborhood advocates there, and especially Mr. Edler, who always seems to put his money where his mouth is. Thank you, Mr. Edler, for helping redevelop that area. And I really appreciate you guys listening to the advocates from that neighborhood and providing professional expertise that helped them accomplish this program.
The one attraction for me is that the historic preservation of those existing buildings that was built during that time, that in the 20s and teens. Sims, and then Ms. Mobian. Oh, Ms. Mobian first.
Only because I'm on the committee. I guess I'm curious, because this is the second time in recent months that we are changing zoning regulations for specific neighborhoods. If another neighborhood came in here with a similar request, this would then be used and they can do something similarly without a lot of pushback, I guess. But I know what you're saying, that even with this, they would have to redo a conditional use zoning, or they don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, I think each neighborhood might be a little different in terms of the character and what people want to see, but to your question, if someone came in and said, hey, we would like to have a form-based overlay similar to this, that's something we would be happy to work with the neighborhood. We're also, as part of the Mayor's Great Streets Initiative, kind of looking at those areas and maybe making similar zoning changes. One of the big ones is parking, as was mentioned before. A lot of times what happens is if you have a stringent parking requirement, people will tear down old buildings in order to meet that requirement, and that's something that we're trying to avoid.
I see. One other question, since you talked about streets, when you make those streets and you change, you have something that's coming out, like on Exchange, are we going to put something big there that people can see? You know what I mean? When we made the indentation for the parking on Exchange.
Oh, having the curb cut for
Yes.
the parking.
Right. Will there be something put there so people can actually see the part that's coming out?
I think that's something we can work with the traffic engineer on. One thing that we've talked about in Kenmore, and I think we've got an example of it in Highland Square, is some of the off-street parking. So on the numbered streets off of the boulevard, just simply striping parking spaces on them like we did on Edgerton and Conger. A lot of times it just sends that message to the public, hey, you're allowed to park here, and we can make better use of the parking area that we have.
Thank you. Ms. Sims?
Just first of all, I just wanted to commend the Alliance, who I have the opportunity often to work with. It's always good when the community is literally the community that's talking about the changes they like to see in the community. But I did have a couple of questions because Councilman Fusco mentioned the dollar store. So are these existing stores per se, those are just grandfathered in, there's no,
Yeah, that's correct. You know, there is a Family Dollar on the block. That is considered legal non-conforming or grandfathered in. So nothing would necessarily change that. It's just if somebody wanted to come in and build new or tear that building down, then that property, then that new developer would then have to conform to the current code.
Okay. So recently, we created this integrated department. And so I guess my question, second question would be, did we look at any impediments to new businesses? For example, do we get pushback from, say, businesses who want to come into a community that has these historic designations? Are they less likely because there's the stringentness of the requirements, or do we know if that is an impediment of any kind?
That's a great question. A couple of thoughts. So I think in this particular case, business owners were very supportive of this because they like the idea of the historic character being, maintained. I think in each neighborhood it may be a little different, and that's where working with the partners in the neighborhood is important. In terms of the Office of Integrated Development, I think it's fair to say these zoning changes are very important, but they're a tool, they're a means to an end. So simultaneously with the Great Streets program, we're also working with small business attraction into vacant spaces, helping existing small businesses, and then the street component itself, working with our engineering department on street design, making sure these streets are safe to walk and bicycle and so forth. So it really is kind of a multi-pronged approach to revitalizing each area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's just interesting the way we've always addressed zoning is parking, parking, parking. And now we're shedding that. It's an interesting shift. Oh, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One point that isn't lost with me is, as Councilwoman Amogian spoke, we've had two of these come in here recently, and a key component is the engagement of the community. But understanding what defines community within these organizations. And I don't want us to get lost in understanding the importance of that, but I think it's something that in some areas we may have to help put structure to as a city. And I bring that up because we have a piece that's been sitting in rules that I'd like for us to bring back out. I've spoken to the chairman of the chairperson of the Rules Committee, Mrs. Keith, because I think as a council, we need to make sure that there's synergy between what these groups look like, so that we can have them engaged, make sure that they really do reflect the communities that they represent. I'm not saying that these don't, but I'm saying we know that they've been a key asset to moving and advancing the development in these communities. So I hope that we don't, that we understand the importance of the communities in these processes, and as a council, move forward in formalizing a structure for neighborhood advisory groups that come and help us with forming legislation and policy on the neighborhood level.
Thank you. Very good. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll now move on, and I'll invite everyone. If we could, I just, go ahead, Mr. Swirsky. I'd like to remind all the committee members we do have 2 more public hearings to go and a lot of legislation.
I just want to point out that in the 2 situations that we've had, the neighborhood leadership came from the neighborhood. It wasn't chosen by the mayor, it wasn't chosen by council members. It was citizens who live and or work in that community who had representatives working with our city professionals to craft that legislation.
Thank you. That's a discussion for another day, perhaps.
That's how
Perhaps.
legislation is outlined.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, very good. Let's now move on. I'd like to invite you again this evening at 7 o'clock, where we'll have another public hearing and a recommendation from this committee to all of council. The next item that's up for a public hearing is authorizing conditional use to retain a solid fence at 1522 Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Cheryl Dalka is requesting retention of a solid fence within the building line setback. The zoning code stipulates that any solid fence over 30 inches in height must conform to a setback. The required setback for the fence here is 20 feet. Since the fence is 2 feet and 6 inches from Ruckle Road right-of-way, conditional use approval is needed for the 17-foot, 6-inch variance of the setback. The solid fence encloses the side and rear yards of the corner property between the rear of the dwelling and the detached garage. Petitioner's driveway is located along Malaysia Road. Aerial photos show the fence has been there as far back as 1994. The planning staff recognizes that corner lots are more restrictive due to 2 building line setbacks. The traffic engineer's office previously conducted an inspection and noted that the site visibility was not an issue because no driveway exists along the west side of Ruckle Road. Any site obstruction of vehicles or pedestrians is eliminated. Because the traffic engineer does not object to the location of the fence, planning staff and planning commission recommends approval subject to the condition.
Thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Malaysia Road at 1522 Malaysia Road for a sign? Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? Anybody? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed fence that's been built at 1522 Malaysia Road? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone against? Very good. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from any committee members? Okay, very good. Hearing none, we'll now move on to the third item that's up for public hearing, which is authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 2196 Eastgate Commons. Mr. Antucci.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Antonio and Davina Preston are requesting permission to establish a child daycare business center at this location. The proposed daycare center would occupy the walkout basement area of the 2,436 square foot 2-story dwelling. Care for a maximum of 12 children will be provided by the petitioner and a full-time assistant. The hours of operation are from Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. No changes are proposed for the interior or exterior of the house. A fenced-in play area is located behind the house. Petitioner received Board of Zoning Appeals approval on July 17, 2017 to operate a daycare center for up to 9 children and is in good standing with the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio recently revised its child care rules, and any approved provider with 7 to 12 children is now considered to be a Type A home. Petitioner wishes to operate to the maximum allowance provided by her state license for 12 children. Petitioner holds a degree in integrated math education and is a former second grade teacher. Providing care for up to an additional 3 children would not significantly raise the level of activity on the property, nor have a detrimental effect on nearby homes, and providing quality daycare services is beneficial to the entire city. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions.
Thanks. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 2196 Eastgate Commons? If you could please provide for the committee your name and address.
Okay. My name is Davina Preston, and it's my home where I'll be providing the care. I'm basically here to answer any questions. I provide in-home child care for children before they go to school. I am a former teacher, degree in education, and I place a high value on education in the home. And all of my children, I had my first graduating class. I went to kindergarten last year, and all of them were performing at just about first grade level, so when they enter kindergarten.
Very good. That's interesting. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request?
Good afternoon. My name is Antonio Preston, and I reside at 2196 Eastgate Commons Drive, and as well, I'm here to speak in favor of the daycare center. My wife started the daycare center initially to care for our 2 children. However, both of us, as she stated, are educators and certainly lifelong learners. She decided that as a passion, she wanted to provide that type of care within our home. She has done an amazing job within our home, and so I would love for her to continue to have that impact on as many children as possible. Again, right now, she has been operating with about 7 to 9 children, but the additional children would not only be there for additional income and so forth, but it will also be able to be an impact on a few other children within the neighborhood. So we just ask that you would find us in favor of that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? Hearing none. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone against? Hearing any? Nope, okay. We'll now close the public hearing. Is there any questions or comments from any committee members, any council members? Very good. We'll now move on. Okay, sorry, I apologize. I missed you, Mr. Swirsky, and then Ms. Amobian.
Yeah, just,
I just have a question. I think I asked this before. Are we going to change our regulations to meet the state so we don't have to have people come down for conditional zoning? Is that?
We have had some discussions about that, about aligning, now that there were those changes in the state law and code, so we are discussing the merits of doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swirsky.
just, Mr. Preston, you still principal? Yes, sir. Yeah, wish you had mentioned that. Okay. We just feel like we're lucky to have experienced educators. The city's really benefiting from having experienced educators who are behind this project. They have the expertise and the knowledge and ability to follow through on a good program. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, I will now move on to the balance of the agenda, of which I'll recommend time, short of any concerns or comments. And we'll move on to the new list of legislation, which the first item is approving the donation of city-owned land, determining said property is not needed for public use.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. This will be a donation to UNDC for a new single-family home that's already been started. We would ask for consent agenda.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, consent agenda. Is there a recommendation for consent?
Recommendation for consent.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. The second item is ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property on 5th Avenue, McKinley, and 479 Chittenden for the CSO Rack 3 Kelly Green project.
These would be acquiring 3 properties for the upcoming Rack 3 project. We would be purchasing off East Akron Community House. It would be at their costs. We would ask for consent agenda.
Questions or comments? Okay, there's a motion or second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Consent agenda it is. Those opposed? Supposed to ask that for the lawyers. Okay, 3, ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property for the CSO Rack 1011 storage basin project, authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into related agreements.
Thank you. Yes, this would be purchasing property through the Summit County Land Realization, the Summit County Land Bank. This property has had severe title issues. They've agreed to clean it up for us. They're charging us a nominal fee to acquire these. We would ask for consent agenda.
Fourth one. Very good. Questions or comments? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Consent agenda it is. 4, authorizing the purchase of various interests in real property located on or around Wellington Avenue to facilitate the completion of CSO Rack 1011 storage basin project.
This would be the purchase from 2 different property owners. Some of these would be permanent easements, some are temporary easements for the construction for the upcoming project. We would ask for consent.
Primarily easements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for consent agenda?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Now, the one property is 8,000, the other one is 2,500?
Yes, correct. That particular property affects 3 different parts.
Oh, 3, okay.
Some are permanent, some are temporary. We're taking away access off of his property. We're chopping it up pretty good. It is commercial land, it is not residential land.
Okay. Very good. Consent agenda okay?
Yes, sir.
Is there a recommendation for consent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it with 1 abstention. Mr. Clerk?
Pardon me?
The ayes have it with 1 abstention. Would you
Okay,
like a
who was
roll
that?
call, sir?
Okay, thank you.
Would you like a roll call?
No, I don't.
You got it?
But,
Okay, very good, thank you. 5 is ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into agreement and grant an easement for on city-owned property near Front Street to the East Ohio Gas Company.
Thank you. Yes, East Ohio has approached us to obtain an easement. They need to redo a gas main out there. We've worked out an agreement with them to receive some payment. We would ask for consent agenda.
Okay. Questions or comments?
We don't have to spend any money, do we?
No, we're receiving $700 for this lease agreement,
Okay,
I believe.
Yes, correct.
Correct?
so move.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. You guys have it.
Thank you.
And I was told that I have a substitute of the substitute. Some of the language is not accurate. On this 5A, this is authorizing conditional use to install signage exceeding zoning code requirements at 1650 Diagonal Avenue. We do have a substitute. I'm not sure where it may be. But what this is in essence what we had talked about last Monday and failed to pass because we just didn't have it prepared on time. So what this is that the corner property moving from a 30-foot, I believe, to a 48-foot sign that would have, that would be the electronic sign. So hopefully we'll have it this evening, and we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it before the meeting. With that, is there anything else to come before the committee? We're adjourned. Thanks.
I got it. It should be on your iPad.
Well, you're the one that called the police meeting, so you're the one who called that little caucus. These are nothing here.
That's right. Oh my gosh. The client says no. We're good.
show sign.
So how do I find out if I'm on the list to speak
Talk,
right now?
talk all day.
I'll be calling the Public Service Committee meeting to order right now. We have the minutes before us. Is there a motion on acceptance of the minutes? Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, our minutes pass. We have, at our meeting today, we have Councilman Fusco, Councilwoman Mosley Samples, and Councilman Hoke. Okay. Councilman Kamer is absent today. I would like to take time, Mr. Clerk, on our previous
Whole agenda?
old agenda.
Okay.
Thank
Time?
you. Time.
Okay.
I would like to now go to the new items that are before us. The first one is an ordinance 2018 approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board selected pursuant to Section 53.03 of the Code of Ordinances of the City and Resolution Number 87-2018 to hear and determine all objections to the special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in accordance with Resolution Number 87-2018, and which is the 2018 Phase 1, 2, and 3 Arterial Collector Resurfacing Program, determining to proceed with the improvement and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this ordinance would allow us to proceed with our arterial and collector program this year. We would appreciate suspension of the rules. We think we're about ready to get started.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any questions from the committee members?
Let the asphalt roll.
Are there any questions or comments from the other council members? Okay. Just so the audience knows, we have, this is a normal thing that comes before us every year, but because of issue 4, we have the ability to do a lot more road this year, and there has been already numerous discussions, so I don't want you to think, anyone that's in the gallery, to think, oh, this big ticket item comes before us and we're just kissing. We have already done our homework on it and are prepared now to move forward. Okay, do I hear a motion for suspension of the rules? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, we will then present that tonight as suspension of the rules with a favorable report. We'll go to our second item on the agenda, which is an ordinance approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board selected pursuant to Sections 53.03 of the Code of Ordinances of the City and Resolution Number 88-2018 as amended by the Resolution numbered 98-2018 to hear and determine all objections to the special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in accordance with the Resolution Number 88-2018 as amended by the Resolution Number 98-2018, determining to proceed with the improvement and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this would allow us to proceed with Phase 1, 2, and 3 of our residential resurfacing program, and we would appreciate suspension of the rules.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the other council members? Thank you. Okay, they would like to move forward with this, so do I have a motion on suspension of the rules with a favorable report? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be presented tonight as a suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Okay. Number 8 is an ordinance approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board, selected pursuant to Section 53.03 of the Code of Ordinances of the City and Resolutions Number 86-2018, as amended by Resolution Number 97-2018, to hear and determine all objections to the special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in accordance with Resolution Number 86-2018, as amended by Resolution Number 97-2018, determining to proceed with the improvement and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this would allow us to proceed with Phase 1, 2, and 3 of our unimproved street resurfacing program, and we would ask for suspension of the rules.
Are there any questions from council members on the committee? Seeing none, are there any questions from council members in the audience? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion for suspension of rules with a favorable report? Okay, I had a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this motion passes as suspension of the rules with a favorable report, and we will vote on that as council as a whole this evening. Is there anything else to come before the committee? Hearing and seeing none, this meeting is over.
Thank you very much.
Bam, bam, bam. Hi, honey. We're going to take more time on it. There's still some discussion that needs to be made, and there were some suggestions that went into that what if we did this and that, so, yeah, you know, instead of, my suggestion was, why take away all maybe just drop down to $1.50, and then those who don't recycle, maybe we charge them. Right? Yeah, so I think there needs to be a little bit more discussion.
Oh, Maryland's doing safety too.
They contaminate just, sometimes it's one thing that'll just contaminate the whole batch. Yeah. Did you feel this love when you were here?
I can't complain. It's rough out here in America, but I'm hanging on though.
Oh, I think so, Dave. It is. It's a nice little neighborhood.
That's nice compared to some of the other ones that were submitted.
Oh, I know. It's got everything you want, except that it's not new, but it works. I mean, it's average city park. Hey, what's happening? No, not an average. Well above the average city park.
No, yes, it looks nice. Yeah.
And
Huh? Not yet. I'm waiting on your chair. Marilyn keeps chair today.
I'll put a big X on those shit. Well, it just don't make sense. Get out of here. It just doesn't make sense. Because I've been through a number of your ward.
There are a lot of parks who people have great ideas who really need the attention.
Right.
It is part of this. Neighborhoods would kill to have a park like that.
That park is so small, kids get bored after riding the swing. If that makes sense. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly. And you know what they call it?
It's cute.
All they really wanted was some of that rubber stuff. That doesn't even,
That doesn't have. Did you ever notice he walks by and he don't know the schedule, and he looks at the schedule on post? That's why he walks by all the time. Because he doesn't know it's at the end of the agenda. I feel sorry for him. And I don't know how he got elected. He likes bullshitting people or something. They know who he is. Huh? Who are those people? Yeah. But we got something on their agenda.
That's that piece we had from last week, second time.
Oh, okay. I better turn that off.
Oh, sorry. I spoke a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted them to look at the ordinance. Yeah. The neighbor complained they're trying to make me hear about it. Really? Next thing you know, wow. It's ridiculous, you know? Yeah, it is.
We will begin the public safety meeting. We'll begin the public safety meeting in just a moment. We're waiting for one more member who asked if we could wait just a moment. We'll now call the public safety meeting to order. All members are present except for Chairperson Kamer, and I will be taking his place today. We have the minutes before us from last week's meeting. I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes pass. On our old business, we have an ordinance amending or supplementing Title IX, General Regulations, Chapter 92, Animals of Code of Ordinances of the City of Akron and declaring an emergency. John Valley.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the Public Safety Committee. This amended ordinance does three things. Everywhere where it mentions the Director of Public Health, we are now inserting the Director of Neighborhood Assistance. This would provide a permit process for hoofed animal owners and a permit for beekeepers. Beekeepers always did have a permit and a fee. Hoofed animals did not, so we are doing that. And it also aligns the charges to residents on seizing and delivering animals, housing and feeding, aligns us with what Summit County is charging us today. At last week's committee meeting, Public Safety Chair Kamer asked that we have our lead animal control officer present today. That's Ron Dowdy. He's here to my left. And if there's any questions from committee members, we'll go ahead and answer them.
Mr. Dowdy, is there anything you wanted to start off with to inform us of?
Not if the, John Valley just pretty much stated everything that
Alrighty,
I was going to say. Thank you.
We do have a few speakers in the audience, so what I would like to do now, Councilman Kamer called me to say that he would not be able to make this meeting, but he has talked with Councilwoman Sims, and we will allow 3 members of the audience to speak. And hopefully you have signed in and everything prior to speaking. If not, just make sure you do. Now, I know that a few of you were hoping maybe to speak. We do have public comment period this evening after our council meeting that you're all more than welcome to come to. You have 3 minutes to speak. And also the other thing is if you cannot come in the evening for a public comment period, if you would like to send us a letter or an email stating your concerns or questions that you might have, and we would be more than happy to have those probably read out loud at the next meeting, or at least identified as they were submitted to us. So now, do you want to name who's going to come up first, Councilwoman?
Our first presenter will be Beth Nora from Summit Food Policy Coalition. Can I preface this? Sure. So one of the things we really had, I don't know if we'd say concerns or deep interest in having folks to come in and talk today, because a lot of what we're exploring runs in the vein of urban agriculture. And so we wanted really to get a fuller understanding of what exactly this ordinance would mean and the implications to those who are working in that space. So we thought it important to bring those folks here today. I had an opportunity to visit a few homes over the weekends for folks who have apiaries in the neighborhood and residents who were concerned. I personally don't know what best practice is, and I would probably venture to say a lot of us around this horseshoe doesn't. So we wanted to hear from you all, and we thank you all for taking time out to come this afternoon. And as Chairman Keith has said, if you don't get an opportunity to speak, it's not that we don't care, we really do care. And so please, if you can, return this afternoon to share some thoughts, and please don't hesitate to put in writing and submit that information to us. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen and gentlewomen, for having me here today. I did want to say that I think that this proposal really invites a broader conversation around what is happening in the community related to urban agriculture, related to keeping chickens, bees, and so on and so forth. City Council did endorse the food charter on April 30th, 2012, which acknowledged the initiatives and it supported the initiatives for people to self-provision, to provide themselves with their own food in their backyards, whether that was through growing food or those kinds of activities. And I think that this certainly fits within that. And here we have an opportunity to actually follow up on saying, yes, we support those initiatives by actually supporting those initiatives and breaking down barriers, enabling people to be able to provide food for their families. I think what concerns me primarily is that these fees are most likely going to impact those families who want to grow food because their family can't afford fresh produce and can't afford good eggs in the grocery store and that kind of thing. And so this is really placing undue barriers on families that are already struggling to provide food for themselves. So let's try to do what we can to make it easier for them to do so.
So, my request is just a general request that we invite broader conversation from stakeholders who are active in this space with relation to urban agriculture. What does it mean? What are other cities doing? There are quite a few cities who have proactive laws and ordinances around the allowance of chickens and bees and that kind of thing, and I think there's no reason that the city of Akron can't do so as well. It's something that I know the membership of Summit Food Coalition, really, we hear about it all the time. People actively want to be able to raise chickens in their backyard. They want to be able to keep bees, and this is food production. So what can we do as a city council, as your supporters, to make it easier for people to provide food for them, for their families? So my request is just, can we maybe slow down a little bit and invite broader conversation on what the implications of this ordinance are, and can we do something a little bit more proactive to allow self-provisioning of food in our community? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Beth Noor.
Next, we have the Director of Let's Grow Akron, Lisa Nim. You want to leave it to the bees? Yes. So yeah, okay.
Hello, my name is Emily Mueller, and I run Mueller Honeybee Rescue here in the Akron area. I was also the previous apiary inspector for Summit and Medina County, which means that I would go out for the county and inspect honeybee colonies.
Emily, will you give us your address also, please?
It's on this piece of paper,
Okay.
or you mean now? Okay, 58, do you need it now, right now?
That's good, yeah. go
Okay,
ahead.
67 Manchester Road.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm Akron, 44319.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, sorry about that. My business actually rescues honeybee swarms here for free in the Akron area. We are actually dispatched by 311, ODOT, 911, and also the Sheriff's Department, as well as local residents. Last year, we had 4 Akron City apiary locations, one of them being in Firestone Park under Camera. And Camera actually invited us to speak at Firestone on behalf of what we were doing for the community at one point. Had I been responsible for paying what would have been a $200 fee as a person that is working for the city, not for the city, but for the community, I would not have been able to pay that fee because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So that would have absolutely reduced how many rescues I could have done, which I'm removing bees for free in the city for our residents. Currently, there are 203 registered apiaries here in Summit County, so we can assume that close to half of them are within the Akron city limits. That means that there will be an estimated revenue of about $5,000 to pay for this neighborhood assistance personnel. However, I would like to know what the qualifications of this person is and their knowledge about beekeeping, because the state of Ohio ran into an issue similar to this 2 years ago when they stopped allowing people to purchase certain antibiotics for their honeybees by having veterinarians write the prescriptions for them. However, as the county inspector, I was receiving phone calls from the veterinarians who didn't actually know how to inspect the colonies or how to look for pests or diseases within those colonies. So currently, there is actually an underfunded, very much so, program for apiary inspections under the Department of Agriculture, whom is trained by the state apiarist Barb Blotcher. The program is paid for by Summit County and comes from fees that beekeepers already pay to register with the state. So I am asking that we revisit this and readdress what is being written. A lot of people are disabled or veterans who have beekeeper or have honeybees, and this will be detrimental to their already limited funds. I was able to work with Cuyahoga Falls a year ago on their ordinance that they brought to the city, and as a beekeeper, give my professional experience and opinion on what would be best for not only beekeepers but also residents, because honeybees are something that people are nervous about and don't understand. And so I do know that we need to acclimate both people in the situation, but I would like to say that it would be necessary to further expand looking at this ordinance first and trying to accommodate more people, because those who don't have the budget to pay the fees will be technically punished for other people's nuisance issues. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And Michelle Colopy.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm wearing kind of three hats here today. I am certainly Michelle Colopy. My address is 1624 Idlewood Avenue in Akron, Ohio, so I am a resident. I'm also the director of a national organization called the Pollinator Stewardship Council, and we advocate to protect all of our pollinators. I'm also the treasurer of Ohio State Beekeepers Association, and I did bring some information I'm happy to leave with the committee to help educate them about the number of bees within their specific zip codes. We have 87 different beekeepers registered within the zip codes here in the city of Akron. Ohio State Beekeepers has been working on an apiary owner immunity bill at the State House. It's HB 392. And that state bill is going to be utilizing the best management practices, and someone brought up here earlier about best management practices for beekeeping. The Ohio State Beekeepers, which is the commodity group, in a sense, for beekeepers in Ohio, has created best management practices, and those will be tied into HB 392. So that certainly we encourage any city ordinance that is looking to manage bees safely for the public, as well as for the beekeepers and for beekeeper neighbors, is to utilize the best management practices of Ohio State Beekeepers, and I have a copy with me that I'll share with the committee today. So we encourage you to follow and use those best management practices, as well as I'm sure for the smaller livestock, I am sure those commodity groups also have their own best management practices. In my experience working on Ohio's state pollinator plan, as well as Cleveland's pollinator plan, the best legislation happens when you bring all the stakeholders to the table. Please take no offense, but legislators can't draft everything. You don't know everything. It would be better to put this whole ordinance on hold and bring all of the stakeholders together to look at the best management practices, because even in your current ordinance, even with the backflow valve for water, that is incorrect for bees. It is unnecessary. Certainly to then suddenly make the animal control officer the ad hoc bee inspector through this ordinance. Do they know how to manage bees? Are they allergic to bees or not? Will they have a bee suit? When you talk about removing bees, what do you mean by that? And when are you removing the bees? Because the only time you can move bees is at night in the dark. Will the animal control officer work at night in the dark after hours? It's a whole different thing removing bees. It's not like putting a leash on an animal and putting it in the trailer and hauling it away. So we encourage you from the national level at Pollinator Stewardship Council, from the state level at Ohio State Beekeepers, from my personal level as a local beekeeper, put this ordinance on hold, get together with all of the stakeholders that this will impact, and help us work it out, just like in Ohio we've worked with the state pollinator plan, and we have worked with the Cleveland pollinator plan. I know sometimes working with the public is messy, but it's the only way that everyone will have buy-in, everyone will agree on it, and it will be the best plan for everyone, where we protect honeybees, our native pollinators, and our neighbors, and provide pollination for the beautification and the gardens in our communities as well. So thank you very much. Any questions of me before I go away?
No, we'll probably ask the questions after we hear it.
Thank you.
And I have to apologize. I called Michelle up because I just thought she was the next one to come up, but there was another person that was supposed to speak. So if you're counting on your fingers, this will be number 4.
So I know I reached out to Wesley in about last week. We played a little phone tag. I think Rich was able to reach him today. So anything that you can offer, Wes, would be nice. He's one of our prized eBay students, and also in the North Side Market.
Yeah.
Delicious honey.
Thank you.
Is going across the world.
Can you please restate your name and your address?
My name is Brent Wesley. Address? 1019 Emma Avenue. It's Akron, Ohio, 44302. It's important to think clearly before you start speaking on something as important as this. And it's a complicated thing, it really is. It's not just from an urban ag perspective that, you know, it has impact. It impacts our local economy, the attractiveness of a city who wants to grow by a certain amount by a certain time and attract a certain group of folks, whether they're millennials or whatever. I can just speak on my experience. Before, so I started beekeeping in 2013, and before then, I I would have just killed a bee, you know, or which was, to me at that time, anything that's flying, you know. So I didn't know much. If you don't know much about the story of myself and Akron honey, if you've never heard about it, from the address that I just gave you, my wife and I moved here in, I think it was 2005, and decided to raise a family and everything. But, you know, I worked a 9 to 5, still do, and there was this vacant lot across the street, well, around the corner from my house, and, you know, I always heard people, you know, talk about how great Cleveland is, and, you know, West Cleveland, Tremont, you know, the hipster areas. And I thought to myself, like, you know, our city could be cool too. So I bought this vacant lot and turned it into a bee yard. After some persuasion, because of course I didn't know anything about honeybees. I knew I liked honey and everything, you know, like sweet stuff. But I never realized what could happen after that. I look at Akron as a city that is full of promise and full of capabilities and, you know, diverse people with diverse dreams and everything. You know, in addition to what I do now, I'm also a GM for a Fortune 500 company, and I'm accountable for, I don't know, almost like $1 million in billable revenue every month. And I have a lot of people on my team, and I understand that there's a lot of emotions on any team. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of concerns. But the one thing I've learned with having a team of people is you can't just, you can't write rules and standards for the entire thing based on a few different folks, especially at their weaker moments or their most concerned moments. And I kind of feel, just from my experience with kind of this whole thing, it's kind of like, it's been kind of like that, where I know any type of citation is complaint driven. It's gotta be analyzed a little bit more deeply, well, much more deeply than that. I would agree completely that we gotta kind of just put the brakes on and think about it. I know that we all kind of look at Akron as like, this is where we're coming up, and, you know, we're progressive. But kind of hearing, and today's my 14th wedding anniversary, my wife and I, so I kind of cut out on that to be here. and actually I completely forgot about what you wrote me the other day, and I heard it from someone else. I was like, oh my God, I got to get there. You know, so it's pretty important for me to be here, but I think we need to kind of just slow down and definitely bring the people to the table who know what are going on. And I can tell you one thing about beekeepers. This will be my last thing. Beekeepers aren't like selfish people. Like, we may not be the most social. I'm really social, but like most of us, a lot of us aren't very social. But like we want the best for kind of everybody. I've never known a beekeeper not to be like that. So, you know, any concerns that we have aren't, maybe they are self-interested, but they're not selfish. You know, we want the best for everybody. But I'd agree again. Let's just like slow it down and look at it from different angles and kind of have those folks who are stakeholders, trusted stakeholders at the table as well. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brent. Okay, and once again, if you came today to speak and aren't getting the opportunity, our meetings are every Monday at 7 o'clock. After we have our council meeting, we do have it open for public comment. And also, if there ever does come something that comes up in any of our ordinances when we have our committee meetings, if you let the chairperson know ahead of time that you want to speak, the opportunity may be afforded you. I can't say for sure, but it may be afforded to you. And if all of those don't work, then please put in writing your concern or your passion or whatever, so that we have that in front of us as we move forward on this. Okay. Now, are there any questions for our animal warden that took the time to be here today? Councilman Hoke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a phone call from one of my residents that has apiary. She's a beekeeper, and she had concerns about this ordinance coming through and the increase. And I wasn't too sure about it until I started really reading through even more and looking at it and hearing from the people that buzzed in here today. And I was, I had to say that, I'm sorry. But, yeah. And, but being that they're licensed by the state and you have to pay a fee for that, is there also a inspection by the state for any of these? And they're nodding their heads, yes, okay. So, you know, with that and wondering, you know, why are we duplicating an inspection on something that's already has a fee, is controlled by the state, and is inspected by the state? I think that's a little bit of a duplication there that maybe I wouldn't think we would need unless I hear something different. Yeah, I'm looking at, I started jotting things down and thinking about, you know, we have dog licenses, you know, for Summit County. Do we have a dog license for the city of Akron? No. Do we have a cat license?
No.
No, we don't. What about chickens?
You don't have to have a license.
You don't have to have a license. What about a pigeon?
No.
No. What about a potbelly pig?
You have to have them registered. There's 2 registries in the city ordinance. You have to have them registered with one of them.
Okay, so potbelly pigs. Rabbits?
No.
No? But we're going to require a $50 fee for bees. And that's you know, that's where it kind of, you know, hits me a little bit. And it's a business, I understand that, you know, but I also understand that if they go through the inspection and they're okayed by the state of Ohio, what more requirements, you know, do we have, you know, in the city of Akron if the state of Ohio already has it set up and like that? I had, just to, you know, I had a house in my ward that lady had 30-plus cats. And I had to go through animal control, humane society, health department, nuisance department, and everything else. You know, and she still had cats. And the neighbors had to, you know, to deal with the cats, and you know, and she wasn't feeding them properly. They weren't being taken care of. They were dying. There were dead cats all over the place. You know, and it was a nasty situation. You know, and you know, I mean, you know, there's other things that we need to do and need to look at and take care of. And I don't know. I'm just looking at the, you know, unless, like I said, unless I hear something really dynamic about why we should have a bee license, you know, I wouldn't, you know, be in favor of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're so very welcome. Anyone else on the committee care to comment? Any of the other council members that are oh, I'm sorry.
Well, just,
Councilman Swirsky.
Yeah, I agree that the ordinance could be improved if other stakeholders are involved in the discussion. I guess today was the first step in that discussion. The city is doing a lot that's very admirable in terms of economic development, helping small businesses, tax breaks for homeowners. But I do think that we have to recognize that urban agriculture, as Councilwoman Sims pointed out, can be an important part of what we're doing here going forward, and it can make a contribution to economic development. Of course, I have some questions that are very specific to some of these. I don't know where you came up with some of the distances, some of the species that you picked out, but I think overall, I could see that this would really be improved if some really people who have a lot of expertise in these areas were involved in the writing of an ordinance. And I don't think that the benefits of whatever we collected in fees would outweigh the overall long-term impact that urban agriculture can have for our community, and the benefits from that, I think, are things that we should be taking a look at. And I, for one, would like us to see us today take time on it. I think others have indicated an interest in that.
Councilman Swirsky, did you want any of those questions to be answered now that you just threw out?
Well, I mean...
If they can be,
I asked a bunch last week, but I don't know if we have to...
We're not talking about the entire code that deals with animals. We are talking about beekeeping, and you already have to have a permit in the city of Akron to be a beekeeper. The fees have changed in the proposed ordinance, and yes, we agree that we need to take some time on this thing, and the only other thing we are dealing with is the hoofed animal, because somebody reached out to our law department earlier in the year inquiring about getting a permit for hoofed animals. He's got 2 lots that combined are over an acre. They meet the criteria, and he needed to go to the director, the health commissioner, to get that permit. So these are the only changes we're looking at. We're not talking about chickens here. We're not talking about pigeons here. We're looking at a couple minor changes on the permits. And yeah, I agree. We do need to take some time on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, we might want to take a look at the chickens. I asked that last week, where the figure of 100 feet comes from. I don't know why certain pigeons, there might be answers to these. I mean, why did we pick 100 feet for the chickens? I mean, was that an intuitive decision?
We're not here to look at the entire code that deals with animals.
Right, but it's in this ordinance.
It's in the ordinance, but there's not a change in this ordinance that deals with that.
But it's reaffirmed in the ordinance. There's reference to the pigeons, the chickens. These are reaffirmed, so we'd be voting.
Those are already.
I'd like to see that language.
Those are already in the code. To change that, council would have to amend that.
So I believe what I'm hearing you say is you have set out, you have slashed a few things in it, added a few things in it, and these, what has been brought to the light that we need to be addressing would be amendments. But as for the changes right now, there are 2 changes.
There are 3 changes. Hoofed animals, increasing the beekeeping permit fee, charging a fee for hoofed animals, and then the changes that the Summit County Animal Control Shelter charges us for when we seize and deliver animals to the Summit County Animal Shelter. That's what this ordinance does.
Okay. And I think what so many of the committee or council members are saying, that this is now coming before us, we are seeing where we need to make other changes in it besides the ones that you presented. But right now on the table are just the ones that you presented that you are requesting.
That is correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilwoman Sims.
So I concur with Councilman Swirsky, almost by an affirmative on even the amendment says that we kind of looked at it because it's there. What I offer here today, just hearing what some of the folks, again, who are actively involved in the space. I'm kind of a urban agriculturalist wannabe because I see its benefit not only just from an economic standpoint, but from an environmental standpoint. It's laying before us. Why not take the time to address it if we can by, again, enlisting those folks who are like the folks here today that can add some real value to this. I, too, understand kind of what you're saying, but again, I'm still a little fuzzy on where the $50 come from. Is this, and who is really looking after this? I don't know what your experience is. Say your name again, I'm so sorry.
Ron Dowdy.
Mr. Dowdy, I don't know what your experience is messing around with honeybees. I don't know if you've ever gone at midnight to take any away. I don't know if you've ever even gone to inspect. I don't know if you've ever, the difference between a diseased batch of bumblebees versus I think that best practice will help to, one, understand what those best practices are, and 2, to help even allay some of the concerns that we hear our residents talking about. So with that in mind, I too support my colleague's request for additional time.
And we support that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion for time?
Motion for time?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this item will be placed on time.
Thank you.
And Mr. Dowdy, thank you. I know that you are very, very busy because you have a large area. So thank you for making the time to come down. And I actually have gotten a number of compliments on our animal warden of late, so I want to thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you that came down to speak today.
Yeah, I would love to be involved.
Okay, we
in
still have
further
more.
conversations.
Wait,
Yes.
don't we have more? Yeah, this is public safety, yeah, we still have our new.
Sorry.
We haven't finished our public safety meeting yet, we still have some new items on it, so.
Mrs. Sims?
Number 9, ordinance authorizing the agent after publicly advertised for bids to enter into a contract for the purchasing of plate carrier systems for use by the Akron Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, thank you. To my left is Captain Mike Yowie.
Hi. Congratulations, Captain.
And coming to the seat is Lieutenant Brian Oldacre. Our first piece is to talk about our vests. These plate carrier systems will allow our SWAT officers to be safer in their response to emergency type events. This carrier system will assist them when and if they're shot or fired upon with this the steel plates that would be contained inside of this carrier system vest. So we're talking about $29,000, and I would offer to answer any questions you may have about this legislation.
I'm sure there'll be a few. Thank you. Anyone from the committee have a question about the vests? Are these an upgrade from what we have had in the past?
Yes, ma'am, they are, in several facets.
Please tell us.
Number one, the vests, just like many things, wear out over time. They aren't warranted beyond so many years. In addition to that, the new manufacturers make them modular so that they can be added to or subtracted from depending on what our particular mission is at the time. They are also much lighter weight for the officers who, impacting their fatigue and performance on SWAT. So yes, the short answer is they are a considerable upgrade to what we're wearing.
And when you say that they can be modified, can you give us a little extra, tell us how they can be modified in what instance?
They allow to add on shoulder protection, neck protection, groin protection, side protection, and all of that can be added or subtracted again based on the need or what we're needing for that particular mission. So that freedom allows us to adjust to what we're doing, I guess.
To the experience that you're going into.
Right.
Does that come, all of those little add-ons come with the vest, or is that an additional
No, that
cost?
comes with the vest. And of course, one of the big add-ons is the ballistic plates themselves that provide a level of protection that's equivalent to the weapons that we carry on the team, which is kind of a best standard, I guess, safety practice, is to have protection for the weapons and munitions that you carry yourself as a team, and those plates offer that protection to the officers.
And is any of this mandatory, like no matter what call you get, you always have to have those plates on? Or?
Yeah, well, it's a standard that we've set for our team that, yes, we will have protective equipment on it on all operations.
All right. And are all of the vests being replaced or just some?
Just some of them.
Okay. Okay, anybody else on the committee?
Well, that's it.
Councilwoman Sims, and then I'll go to you, Councilman Swirsky.
So I guess I had a question about the number of vests. In the way you talk, it sounds as if this is equipment is very specific to a particular manufacturer. Is that true?
We tested and evaluated several different manufacturers, and this one met all the requirements we had of the vest, and was the best product we could find out there over pretty extensive testing of the different
So we're not publicly advertising for bid. We already have a.
It says it right here.
So we're not publicly.
We are publicly advertising for bids, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we don't have a specific one in
after.
mind already?
Oh, to enter.
I thought that's what you were saying.
The captain is saying that they've done some research on several different manufacturers. This particular request is still going to go out to bid with those specifications that they were wanting to see in the vest. Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. So on the average, how many calls does a SWAT go out on a year?
It goes anywhere from 40 to 80
40 to 80.
operations a year, yes.
And when's the last time we replaced the vest?
Well, it's been intermittently. We are a little bit behind on a schedule. I probably have approximately 14 to 15 vests that are out of warranty currently at this time, and we would like to get on a schedule to replace them so that doesn't happen in the future.
So this one will allow us to buy, how many? Did you say that already?
I'm sorry, ma'am, you asked?
I said this legislation will allow us to buy how many additional?
8.
8.
Right.
Just 8.
How many SWAT members do we have?
40.
40. So is there a schedule to replace the others?
We are currently working on plans for the others, too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilman Swirsky?
Well, Mrs. Sims did a good job with questions, most of the ones I was going to ask. But I guess for us to visualize this, those of us who watch baseball games see the catcher, the chest protector is really improved. They now protect the neck, goes down between the legs, and so modern technology, we're just keeping up with improvements in how to protect the human body that engineers and scientists, I don't know who else had their fingers in it, and it's good to know that the police department is on top of that and doing everything they can to protect the guys that are in dangerous situations. And I think council's going to support it too. Yeah.
Thank you. Good analogy.
Councilwoman Sims?
So just a quick question. If you were to maximize every component in the whole vest where you can add extra pieces in, what would the weight of that be? And how much heavier would that be than what you currently have?
I don't know if I can give you the exact amount, but it's several pounds lighter. It's not a small amount. That in combination with the helmets that we're going to discuss, it's quite a bit of weight savings for the officers. Like he said, the technology has improved dramatically in fabrics and materials that provide ballistic protection, and most of it is centered upon the weight reduction of that product.
So I was just wondering, the taxing on your bodies, I guess that would be my question.
Yes, it is, and I could give you the exact figures later. I don't have them with me, but yes, it is a considerable concern tactically for fatigue and impact on performance of the operators on their operations.
Yeah, so Mr. Director Brown, how are we managing that?
The weight of the equipment or
just the impediment potentially to the SWAT officers, just on the sheer weight.
Okay, so certainly it's an issue in training that we address, and our SWAT medics through the fire department assist us in managing that as an issue, but it's always a risk versus benefit, isn't it? And that's why it's so nice about these vests, that we can adopt them to the mission at hand, is assessing that if it's an extended operation where fatigue would impact the performance, we have to offset the loss and taking the protection of some of the equipment off, right? So it's a mission-specific analysis at the time of what we want to gain or subtract from this protection.
Now, part of that too, Mr. Sims, would be the rotating of the operators.
Beg your
So
pardon?
rotating of the operators. So if their operation was extended period of time, every an hour.
Is that a part of an existing plan that you're rotating? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I always like when you come. You always give very good answers. But I guess, it's always cool if we can protect our officers, but if they too weighted down to get to protect the people, I don't know if we really did a add and a subtracting. That was really good. So thank you for your answer.
Sure.
And I do believe, just to add on to what my colleague said, these are lighter than the previous one. So the training that they probably got trained in was a heavier vest. So thank goodness that they are lighter. And they are, You know, they're lighter, but they're very expensive and well worth it, okay, and very well worth it. But when you figure 8 of them is almost $29,000, you know, well worth it, okay? But that's probably why we're only getting 8 right now. So, and I know that, I know just like the firemen, when I've had the opportunity to put on some of that gear, and that's what the training purposes are, to weed out those that cannot handle something like this. But I would also be just interested to know how much these weigh when they're put on. Are there any other questions from members of council? Anyone that's in the...
So I don't know if I didn't know if I misunderstood. I guess that was my question initially, was what was the weight comparison to the previous, the current vest that you have versus the one that you're getting. If we're saying independent of itself, by itself alone, those vests are heavier, but the reason why we're getting them probably is because you got those additional things that you can now do. Carrying equipment, putting little things in, and so I guess my question was, what's the comparative weight between what you currently use now and what this would do at max?
Yeah, I'll be more than glad to send you exact specifications, but you know, the team has older vests, and as they've progressed through technology, and some of the old vests actually had steel, big, thick steel plates. So you can imagine the difference between that and some of the ceramics or Kevlar materials today. But I can be more than glad to give you the exact amounts, but I promise you it's going to be considerable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? What is your pleasure, Mayor? Deputy Mayor? Is that what you...
Second.
I vote. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this will be placed on the consent agenda. The next to come before us in public safety is an ordinance authorizing the purchase agent, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract for the installation of office cubicles in the detective area of the crime scene unit and declaring an emergency.
Sure, thank you again, Madam Chair and Committee. The Buy One Camera program has 2 officers there now currently. This reconfiguration of that area will give them privacy when they're reviewing the videotapes. Sometimes the videotapes have very strong language and may need to be kept private, so these cubicles and this reconfiguration will help them with that. The lieutenant also advises me that there is some camera replacements, a glass divider to help provide some type of safety or security from folks who may spit on the people, the workers that are there. They have a secretary working there. You know, in addition, they'll be adding carpet, and some of this equipment, the other equipment, has been there since the building was built in the 60s. So, and again, be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the lieutenant's available to do that too, if you have any questions regarding that.
Thank you. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just 2 cubicles?
Actually, I think it's 4 cubicles for those individuals. I think what I understand is that there's going to be some room for growth. We anticipate that this Buy One camera system may grow, technology may grow, so we're trying to have something that's going to be scalable at this point.
So are these from the income tax money?
All the legislation we're requesting, they will be from issue 4.
From issue 4?
May I add?
Unless you have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This actually involves more than the Buy One camera unit. There's a larger area which includes 8 cubicles. There's 16 employees that use this area in addition to the 2 Buy One camera people. We have 3 shifts that use this area. The detectives will be sharing desks, so we're not getting them in individual desks, but this area does have 8 cubicles in addition to the 4.
So the upgrade is for the whole entire gamut, the whole 8?
Yes, this is an overall project. Usually when we had money allocated to the crime scene unit, we've used it to purchase equipment, things that we use in the field. This hasn't been updated. This space in the police department hasn't been updated for quite a long time, and we are in desperate need to move the body-worn camera unit to their own area until we get it out of the view of the public. We have a lot of requests for record checks in this area, so this is a public access area.
Thanks for the correction, or addition, Lieutenant.
All right. So right now, we have enough people to cover all 8 cubicles.
We actually have, 16 people will be using 8 cubicles.
So it's not really scalable. You got a capacity.
On the body-worn camera side, it will be scalable. We have 2 people, 4 cubicles, and we anticipate that unit having to grow.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Hearing and seeing none, what is your pleasure? Is that your pleasure? Thank you. All righty. There's been a motion for consent. Is there a second? Oh, you can't second your own motion. It has been seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will go on the consent agenda. Okay. Our last one to come before public safety is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract for the purchase of high-cut ballistic helmets for use by the Akron Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Thank you,
Deputy
ma'am.
Mayor.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and the committee. And we're looking at 40 helmets. These helmets will be a complement to the vest we just talked about. These helmets were under a 5-year replacement piece where the warranty was 5 years. They're going to be 10 years. So that's a definite benefit. The helmets also are high cut, so they'll be able to accommodate the communication devices that the SWAT team is now using. And also it would include rails. Some of you may have seen our fine military folks with rails on their tactical helmets to accommodate cameras if there were a need to put cameras on those helmets. And I think the total again is about 22,240. So, and I will certainly entertain any questions and try to assist with that, and I'll get back to Captain Yoy if I can't answer them.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So everybody's getting a new helmet, all 40. So are all of the existing 40, have the warranty on them expired? So are they recyclable?
I would say that as an old SWAT team guy, I'm not going to accept a recycled helmet to go into a mission.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
so what happens to the other 40 since they are ballistic helmets?
Practice target.
I don't know, perhaps. I don't know.
Excuse me, let's go.
I'd like to know what happens to them, though.
Target shooting.
What happens to them?
Target practice, baby.
So what happens to the old helmets? They don't get recycled, they just get thrown away?
No, actually, the captain added a little bit of pieces of that, and there's some departments that don't have anything, so that's a little bit better than nothing.
So that's my
Right, so, but
point.
internally, we're not going to use those helmets again.
Okay, so that sounds like a better answer. So, thank you.
So the city of Akron will not use
Yes, we
these
will not
helmets
use,
that-
yes.
Good, okay. Anybody else? Okay, hearing and seeing none, consent agenda?
Consent's fine, thank you.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anything else to come before this committee at this time? Hearing and seeing none, we are adjourned.
Park and Recreation will start in 2 minutes. Park and Recreation in 2 minutes.
Actually, I wanted to give your committee this information because it includes, yeah, I did, yes.
Where you going? For yourself? You should probably take a refresher course. Are you? You're gonna be the oldest guy in the room again. There's always some grandfathers. Why'd you ask their age? No. Just never mind, Bob.
Mr. Clerk, are there minutes?
You're ready. Oh, wait a minute. You thought you were going to try and stump me. You thought you were going to stump me and I didn't have it. Just kidding. Come on. Come on, Russ. Take it back. Just trying to pass a joke on you.
Okay, I'd like to call the Park and Recreation meeting to order. If we could please have approval of the last minutes. I think of the last day that they were. Motion is second. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the two new pieces we have before us today. Let's see here. Okay, the first one is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Neighborhood Assistance to enter into a contract without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with the Board of Education, Akron City School District to provide meal preparation and delivery of services as part of the city's annual summer food service program and declaring an emergency. Mr. Valley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson and members of the Parks and Recreation Committee. This program provides free healthy meals to children and teens 18 years and younger during the summer months when school is not in session. Hundreds of children lose access to school breakfast and lunch that are available during the regular school year. This program fills that gap. We have been doing it for many, many years, but this is our first year that we will be contracting with the Akron Public Schools. We all know they got the food service, and it's generally in operation late August through first couple weeks in June. So we reached out to Akron Public Schools a couple years ago to see if we can form some type of partnership where they could provide our summer breakfast and lunch program throughout the summer, and they were very interested. We just didn't have enough time to put it together in 2017. There'll be 50 locations. 15 of them will be at community learning centers, and they will be kind of the distribution point for the other 30 locations. So we're real pleased that we were able to work with Akron Public Schools on this program. It's a pass-through grant, and the amount of it is $370,000. I have Ms. Brittany Schmokel, the Recreation Bureau Manager, is also with us in attendance today in case there's some technical questions on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask members of the committee if they have any questions, you said 370,000?
370.
Because they have 260 on.
That should have been amended.
Yeah,
That was changed in the contract. This is a pass-through grant, comes into the city of Akron, and is just passed through for the program.
Okay, so, I mean, does this need to be changed because the legislation says 260? I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We'll make that change.
Okay. I guess my question was, does the legislation have to be changed? Okay, so there'll be a substitute coming in this evening? Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Ms. Samples?
Thank you. I'm not sure if Brittany or John could answer this. I know this is part of a grant. In the grant, is it specific to 18 and under? Like for the meals? Because what my concern has always been when we had the program over at each, we would have parents who would walk the kids over so the kids could eat breakfast, bring them back for lunch, and then, you know, when there's food left over, that's the food you give away the next day first, and then you go to the new stuff. But at the end of the week, we would always be giving the stuff back to Audley to take back. So are we audling whether there's food left over, and is it specific in the grant where it states that only 18 and under can eat? Because what I'm really concerned with is we talk about our kids that are not eating in the summer, but I know when it gets toward that end of the month, you know, I've watched a couple workers be very, very belligerent with parents when they would catch a parent taking a nibble off of a sandwich. And it always bothered me that a parent would have to sneak to take a nibble off of some food that they're really not supposed to have. But is it specific in a grant where it states that someone over 18, a parent bringing a kid over, can't eat with them?
Yes, it is specific in the grant that it is 18 and younger, and they do have to follow that. It is very strict. But as you mentioned at the end, when the food is donated, after that point, once it is donated somewhere, anybody is able to eat that. And we do have adult food service programs as well going on at some of our centers.
So those adult programs will be going on simultaneously when the ones for the summer with the kids will be going on? How does that work? How do we know what locations will they have programs for the parents? Because I know within my zip codes, I mean, there's some serious issues there at the end of the month where parents aren't eating because they want to make sure the kids are coming to the program and eat, but then there's nothing for them.
Salvation Army feeds at the Patterson Park Community Center and the Summit Lake Community Center Monday through Friday, and that started in 2017. Salvation Army reached out to Mayor Horgan shortly after he was elected to mayor, and was looking at a couple locations to provide this service. It seems to be going very well. We're willing and ready to move on to another location, but that's a decision that the Salvation Army would have to make.
So how do we so is that a phone call I could make to them to see if there's other facilities that they can move into, like a Joy Park, for instance?
We've had conversations with them, and on several occasions that, you know, we have 12 community centers, and we're willing to go to a different location, and the ball's kind of in their court.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This is a reimbursement, this program. It's a reimbursement.
Okay. Just the thing that falls on me is that all this week there's been articles in the paper, if you've been looking at, you know, dealing with those struggling to make ends meet. Policy Matters has had a lot of articles. This just speaks to the needs that are out there in the community. And this is to Councilwoman Samples' question. I know we've asked this before. Is there a way with these programs, I mean, we've identified the centers where we place them, where we could possibly get some more in-depth information, like providing opportunities for parents who would like other assistance when they bring their children here, a form where we could kind of collect some of that data to see where the other needs are. I give you an example, like we had talked about using, and I don't know where we sit with this, the LIFT program, the water assistance program, where if people are struggling with their water bill, there's a good chance that they're struggling with other things. If we got that data, then we could connect them to other services. Do we use this in any kind of way, or we just know that children come, they eat, and we don't know where the concentrated area that they're coming from or anything like that, outside of that that they're coming to the CLC?
At this point, we're not collecting data when the kids come in to eat. That's something that we can look into to see if it's permissible.
I'm just thinking it's a good way to connect. If a parent's coming there so their child can get something to eat, or if the child's coming there, possibly that'd be a good place to make sure we have information for other services that the parents can be connected to, that's all. But is there anything else to come from the school? If not, consent agenda, is that fine?
I would request that we suspend the rules just because of the fact that the program's going to be starting here shortly.
Okay. If there is any further discussion, all in favor? Okay. Motion carries. Moving on to the next piece. We have an ordinance authorizing the expenditure of funds in support of Akron's summer reading program for 2018 to combat summer slide and help Akron students maintain and enhance reading achievement over the summer and declaring an emergency.
Yeah, this is the program that we have funded for the last 3 years, this city council along with the mayor's office, with regards to summer slide, summer reading program. A number of years ago, Marilyn Keith and I had approached Recreation Bureau along with Carla Sibley to try to get this going in terms of our recreation centers. This is kind of like it's morphed and getting better and better every year. I know that the mayor's office has weighed in terms of, as well as Recreation Bureau. Brittany Schmokel has weighed in terms of how we can deliver this service a little bit better. Councilman Swirsky has commented several times to me about how we can improve it and tweak it. This is where we're at today now. This is perfect in terms of timing because this complements what, Veronica Sims was at our last meeting in terms of tweaking and trying to fine tune this thing. Where we're at is we've kind of taken it from community centers. Now it's in our CLCs along with the lunch program that we just talked about. And actually, Mr. McGill is the one who said, let's put this wrap around the lunch program, which was a great idea. Last year, I think it was a great year. We had a good year. I'd say about 100 kids or so were actually served, 65 from Akron Public Schools. There was a report, I believe, I handed out to everybody last week, and if you didn't get a copy, let me know. We'll get you one. But this program is encompassed around young children and making sure that they read during the summer. We need volunteers. We need you to step up. I'm going to step up for 2 days a week for 9 weeks this year. I challenge my colleagues to do the same and go out and recruit people because we're going to supersize it. It's been about 5 or 6 community centers is where we had it last year and the year before. Now we're going to 12. So we're asking for more money, obviously. But with our partnership with Christina Gonzalez from the SEI, Summit Initiative, Summit Education Initiative, what we found is at least with the data that we were able to utilize, is that 3rd to 5th grade, we're seeing some movement in a positive direction with regards to that. This is meaningful in terms of our city, in terms of our youth, and it really kind of complements what the United Way and the mayor's office and Eileen Shapiro and her office, the bold goals. This is very similar to that, and this complements those efforts that are out there. This is $10,000 is what we're asking. This is in our own budget, basically. This is coming out of my neighborhood, our Akron, that $40,000. This is $10,000 for that. And so this would be $3,000 would go to the Recreation Bureau for a coordinator that could collect the data, the information, and then $7,000 for Akron Public Schools for volunteer liaison that can collect the data as well. We're going to 12 centers. We're going to every ward in the city is where this is going to go. So every ward is going to get touched, going from 5 to 6 to 12. And so that's where we're at on this thing. Brittany Schmokel is here, John Valley's here, should there be any questions.
Okay. Good program. got a couple questions. One, since you mentioned the money. Now, we cut the My Neighborhood Akron grant from $10,000 per ward down to $40,000 for the whole program. And then we take $10,000 from that, so now you're cutting it down to $30,000. So you cut the program by 70% without any discussion.
Thought we talked about this last week.
No, it was mentioned that possibly it could come from
Yeah.
there. Confirmation on what we were going to do came out of last week's meeting. I mean, because the question was, well, we could always get more money to put into the program. And the question was, well, where's that money going to come from?
Sure.
So, I mean, I have a concern where the funding source is coming from.
Well, yeah, and my thought was that we haven't spent over $15,000 over the last 3 years.
No. I understand this. If you understand it, it took us about 3 or 4 years to get the neighborhood partnership grant up and running. Okay. And if you looked, and I don't know if that information ever got back to Madam President, there were grants that were refused that if we changed the way we work this program, wouldn't be refused. I just, not a problem with the program. I have a problem with, we had one discussion, nothing was determined, and we just determined that the money's going to come out of the My Neighborhood or Akron grant. That we already cut by 60%, and now you're dropping it down to...
I understand.
I mean, you can't just throw your hands up and say, yeah. I mean, we had no discussion about it. There's
Yeah,
other
we talked
places
last week.
There are other places where we could get these dollars, because my question is, how did we pay for it last year?
Okay, then.
No. This is my question. How did we pay for this last year? Out of what budget did it come out of?
This came out of the recreation budget in 2016 and 17. This would be year 3 of that. But we just can't continue to provide these services with the budgets that we have. So we have to, we had to be
And last
creative,
year,
we had to
it was
look elsewhere.
$5. It was $5,000, I believe.
Okay, and I could understand, I mean, that I could understand. And I could understand taking it out of City Council's My Neighborhood or Akron grant if we kept it at the $100,000. Because, yeah, we would have that money there, but to take it to...
I understand, and forgive me, like I said, we talked about last week during committee.
No, it was
and
brought up last week.
I thought we had a conversation about this. The second piece, there was no, I thought we, and I apologize if we didn't.
I mean, we just spoke about it.
But the thing of it is that the other side of this thing too is, I thought this would be also a good way, because really, we had some conversation, I won't put any words in anyone's mouth, but the thing of it is the at large, we don't have like a ward or whatever that we can work with in terms of doing something. And I thought, well, the last 3 years, we haven't really pushed for anything as at large representatives. So this is a good source for...
Please understand me. I agree with the program. I spoke to our colleague who's been doing this with private partnerships on the success of their program. They ran it out of my ward at House of Lord. I understand the value of the program. The part that I don't get is how we're funding it. That's the part that I don't get.
Well, like I said, but we've not spent over $15,000 for the last 3 years, and there was nothing intentional to. And I'll be happy to roll up my sleeves, sit down with the finance department, and find another $10,000. I'll be happy to do that if that's
I guess
a problem.
This has been a discussion that we've always had. To sit down and we shouldn't have to find anything. We just went through the budget process. We should know where it is. And the question has always been, over the years, when we didn't use it in the past, it went back to the general fund. We've identified money where it could come, where we could get these dollars from. I just have a problem with, there's been no council discussion. It was brought up last week. I mean, this is a program that, Mr. Valley, you said for 3 years. I'm sure the administration understands the value of the program. we on council understand the value of the program. What gets me is not understanding the value of, and we just spoke about it in the last meeting, the neighborhood engagement piece and working with residents to do things. We cut that budget. I just don't understand it. We've got another thing that's been sitting on the docket that this council approved, which is actually the piece where we would use a tool to analyze the budget. And we say we can't find money for that. But yet, I know this has a more of an emotional heart tug to it, but we find money for this without any discussion. It was brought up last week.
I apologize. Like I said, I was under the assumption that our discussions last week was kind of like...
Let's pull the minutes and see if anything came out of that. But let's go ahead. That's a discussion for that we do need to have. In regards to this piece here, the program, I mean, we all understand the value of the program. I do believe, though, that, and this is kind of in lines of what we spoke about in regards to the Drew Joyce piece. There are ways for us to find community partnerships to leverage and get more bang for our buck. I mean, one is, we've got a council person who's always doing the program. We've talked about working with those groups who work with our youth all the time and have our youth, and getting them to incorporate a program like this in there. Most of our churches have some form of vacation Bible school program, a Sunday school program, where if we network with them, we can leverage what they're already doing to do this. And so when we don't have these kind of discussions, we spend resources that we don't have to spend. There's a way to make this work.
No,
thank you for these discussions. So
we did have that discussion, and that's why the person that the Recreation Bureau, the coordinating staff, we had even talked about in our last meeting about reaching out to some of the churches so that we can collect their data and turn that over to SEI. And the ultimate goal here for me has been from the very beginning, and that is, let's try to build this thing, collect the data from SEI so we can then go for grant funding. And so that we can now go to, get grant money as opposed to city money. And that's been kind of like the goal here. And part of the Recreation Bureau for the coordinating staff person, their job is going to be collecting the data. And we talked about like going to the House of the Lord and going to these other summer reading programs and tapping into that and using that also and forwarding it to SEI as well.
As a way of, I'll say this now, if none of the members on the committee have anything, we can pass this. But just as a thing, I'm even thinking of a city employee, Lance Bell, who runs Wall, okay? Working with kids right there. These are groups that we can work with, incentivize them to incorporate this in their program, to, even if we're going to have some money to spend it, help some of these programs along their way. But it's almost like what the folks with the beekeepers came down. If we don't have discussions, if we talk in silos, we end up spending money we don't have to spend from a budget that has already been cut by now 60 to 70%. We can leverage our things better.
Yeah, please, I apologize for any miscommunication on my part, but we'll talk.
Ms. Sims?
With all due respect, I certainly understand my colleague's position. I'm mad that we don't have $150,000 or $100,000 to spend, but the issue before us, I know since then, since I've been on council, always looking for an opportunity to figure out how we as at-large members play in this play box, trying to see the city overall and how we make some contributions. So I definitely thought this was a good project to do that. Additionally, with the summer eating program for young folks, now you have not only feeding the physical, but also the educational, on some level, food and some spiritual too. And so I think the program is a good match. I thought we had a little conversation. I tried to reach out to folks to have some more conversation because I thought it was a good opportunity. Not only, I think for us to show up us all to show up as a benefit to the young people in the city. Although, again, I understand, I was a little upset about the larger loss of money, but I just think this is a good opportunity. I think it's a good use of, even in this small amount, of the resources that we have to impact the whole entire city. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there aren't any other comments, Ms. Mosley Samples or any other council persons have anything they want to say?
All right. I think it's a good program. I think it's really, really needed. And I applaud Councilman Fusto for his leadership on this.
Mr. Valley?
Just one other comment. I mean, when we started this program a couple years ago, we had a couple goals in mind. One, we wanted to do them at community centers that did have summer lunch programs. We also wanted to do them at community centers where we had a presence of the active adults, in which we do have at every community center. We also wanted to do it at community centers where we had a strong block watch in that neighborhood, because that's how we seeked out the volunteers. And this year, with going to the 8 community learning centers where you're having the summer feeds, summer lunch and breakfast and lunch program, you're going to have kids there, but it just makes it so much more difficult for the Recreation Bureau to staff 8 community learning centers during the daytime when we're staffing our community centers and we got our summer camps and things like that, and one of them is a church. So we are staffing the program at the 3 community centers that are mentioned in here. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Well, if there's nothing else to come before us on this matter, how would you, is this another one that you need?
Suspend the rules. I would, if the committee's fine with consent agenda or suspension rules, I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay, if I can have a motion for consent, please. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Did you have something you want to say, Ms. Sims? Could always just rescind it.
Yeah, you can just pull a committee to suspend the rules and rescind the last.
Yeah. So we'll do that on the floor. Yeah, do it now? Okay. Okay, the motion is second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.